The winter wind in Chicago did not merely blow, it howled with a predatory sharpness, rattling the double-paned glass of the Lincoln Park apartment. Inside, the air smelled faintly of roasted rosemary, stale red wine, and the lingering heavy scent of expensive cologne, the remnants of a dinner party that Clara Vance had spent 14 hours preparing, executing, and cleaning up alone. It was 1:15 a.m. Clara sat at the dark wooden kitchen island, the cold polished stone pressing through the thin sleeves of her worn cotton sweater. Her fingers, stiff and slightly calloused from scrubbing grease off stainless steel pans, hovered over the glowing keyboard of her laptop. On the screen was a spreadsheet, a meticulous ledger of personal expenses, income tracking, and client invoices that she managed as a freelance bookkeeper. In the master bedroom down the hall, her husband, Julian, was fast asleep, his steady, unbothered breathing audible even over the hum of the refrigerator. For 7 years, Clara had existed in this space not as a partner, but as an invisible architecture holding up someone else's life. To the outside world, Julian Vance was a rising star in medium-tier residential real estate, charismatic, impeccably tailored, and always ready with a charming smile. But to Clara, he was a master of a far colder art, emotional erosion. In the early years of their marriage, Clara's quiet nature had been mistaken for passivity. Over time, Julian and his family had converted that passivity into a requirement. When Julian's friends came over, Clara was introduced not by her profession or her sharp analytical mind, but with a dismissive wave of Julian's hand. Clara keeps the home fires burning while I handle the heavy lifting. Whenever she attempted to discuss her desire to take on larger corporate clients, Julian would offer a soft, condescending chuckle. "Why stress yourself out, honey? Let me handle the real world." Then came the insidious weapon that defined their private life, the silent treatment. Whenever Clara expressed exhaustion or questioned Julian's erratic spending, he did not yell. He simply withdrew. He would look right through her, answering her questions with an icy silence that stretched from days into weeks. He moved through the apartment like a ghost, leaving Clara to navigate a suffocating void where her words held no weight and her presence carried no value. She had learned to tiptoe around his mood shifts, shrinking her needs, her voice, and her dreams until she felt like a phantom in her own home. Her only solace was her work, the late-night hours spent balancing ledgers. Dollar by dollar, invoice by invoice, Clara had built a secret sanctuary, $65,000 in a private savings account under her maiden name. It was her quiet proof of self-worth, intended to serve as a down payment on a modest, sunlit townhouse of her own. 3 months ago, Julian had discovered the account. Instead of anger, he deployed a sudden, suffocating warmth. "If we move this money into a joint account just for a few weeks, the mortgage underwriters will see our combined liquidity and approve our loan at a prime rate," he had whispered, wrapping his arms around her. "We're a team, aren't we?" Lusting for the affection she had been starved of for years, Clara had agreed. Now, sitting in the quiet chill of the kitchen, Clara unlocked her phone and tapped her banking app. Joint savings account ending in 4092, $0. A profound, terrifying coldness flooded her chest. The transaction history showed a single wire transfer from earlier that morning to an escrow account. Trevor Vance, debt settlement, and venture capital. Trevor, Julian's 26-year-old younger brother, the family's golden child whose luxury car wash business had collapsed within 90 days due to gross mismanagement. Clara walked down the hallway, pushed open the bedroom door, and turned on the overhead light. "Where is the $65,000, Julian?" Her voice was strangely level. Julian blinked, his expression shifting smoothly from annoyance to practiced indifference. Oh, Trevor was facing a personal lawsuit. They were going to freeze Mom's house. Family helps family. Clara, that's how real households operate. "That was my money, Julian," Clara whispered, 5 years of my sweat. Our home. Julian scoffed, standing up. Clara, your little bookkeeping side hustle pays for groceries. I bring home the real income. Trevor has genuine business potential. Successful people don't whine over minor sacrifices. Julian's phone chimed on speakerphone. It was his mother, Evelyn. Julian, dear, did you finalize the transfer? Tell Clara not to make a fuss. She works from home anyway. It's not as if she has actual corporate overhead to worry about. Julian didn't defend her. He simply folded his arms, looking down at her with mild irritation. In that precise second, something fundamental inside Clara Vance severed. It was not an explosion of rage. It was the quiet, absolute death of an illusion. The grief vanished, replaced by an extraordinary, crystal-clear stillness. I understand, Clara said quietly. She walked into the guest room closet, pulled out a charcoal gray suitcase, and packed only her essential documents: laptop, tax certifications, passport, and basic clothing. She took her master set of keys, placed them neatly on the marble kitchen counter next to her wedding ring, and pulled her suitcase behind her. As she opened the front door, the freezing Chicago wind rushed in. She did not hesitate. She stepped out, pulling the heavy door shut behind her. The latch clicked into place with a sharp, definitive metallic snap. Standing in the dimly lit hallway, Clara felt her chest expand. For the first time in 7 years, the air entering her lungs felt pure, cold, and entirely her own. The studio apartment on the 3rd floor of a brick building in West Loop smelled of old radiator steam, pine cleaner, and damp wool. Outside Clara's narrow window, the green metal tracks of the CTA Pink Line rattled every 20 minutes, shaking the glass panes in their wooden frames. The room held only a twin mattress resting directly on the floor, a folding metal chair, and a laminate desk she bought for $15 at a local thrift store. Clara did not unpack her feelings. She unpacked her documents. On her second morning away from Lincoln Park, she walked 6 blocks through the biting wind to a small law office on Adams Street. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Jenkins, sat behind a desk stacked high with manila folders. Clara did not cry. She did not explain her heartbreak or ask for sympathy. She placed her bank records, tax forms, and marriage certificate on the desk. I need a legal separation, Clara said. Her voice was flat, dry, and steady. I want my tax obligations separated immediately. I want all joint financial liabilities frozen, so my husband cannot open credit lines or secure business loans under my name. Sarah looked up, her eyebrows raised at Clara's calm precision. No alimony? No claim on his real estate commissions? No, Clara replied, looking Sarah straight in the eye. I want clean borders. I want absolute legal protection from his family's debts. Nothing more. By that afternoon, the legal notices were filed and served. When Clara returned to her studio, she took a black marker and wrote 3 lines on a white sheet of paper, taping it to the wall directly above her desk. Do not complain. Do not play the victim. You are responsible for your own happiness. She began her transformation not with grand declarations, but with cold, physical discipline. She walked into a small barbershop near Fulton Market and asked the barber to cut off her long, faded hair. Heavy brown locks fell onto the white sheet covering her lap, piling up on the floor like dead leaves. She walked out into the cold air with a sharp, chin-length bob that revealed the firm line of her jaw and the clear, cold focus in her eyes. Every morning at 5 o'clock, before the sun rose over Lake Michigan, Clara pulled on her running shoes. The air along Lake Shore Drive hit her face like ice water. Her lungs burned with every breath. Her feet pounded the frozen concrete. Thud, 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 matching the rhythm of the waves crashing against the jagged stone barriers. She ran until her muscles screamed, washing away the soft, hesitant woman who used to tiptoe around Julian's silence. During the day, Clara sat at a small cubicle on the 6th floor of Apex Capital, a commercial real estate fund in the financial district. She had taken an entry-level position as a junior data analyst. The office smelled of dry carpet dust, fresh printer toner, and burnt coffee, while other analysts left at 5 or spent their afternoons chatting near the water cooler. Clara stayed locked to her dual monitors. She analyzed cash flow models, audited property balance sheets, and memorized corporate tax codes. When her 9-hour shift ended, her second day began. She walked back to her apartment, turned on her small desk lamp, and opened her thick textbooks. She was studying for the Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA designation. A brutal, 3-level exam with a failure rate higher than 60%. Her nights became a silent war against exhaustion. The yellow light of her lamp cast long shadows across the bare plaster wall. Her eyes ached under the glare of complex financial formulas, asset valuations, and statistical models. When fatigue pressed down on her eyelids at 2 a.m, she did not go to bed. She stood up, splashed freezing tap water onto her face, wiped her skin with a rough towel, and sat back down. She cut out all sugar, all alcohol, and all social distractions. She ate simple meals of brown rice, seared chicken, and plain spinach out of plastic containers. Her hands lost their softness, becoming firm and steady. Her posture changed. Her shoulders pulled back, her chest opened, and her head remained erect, whether she was walking through a snowstorm or standing in a crowded elevator. 6 months after leaving Julian, the first test results arrived in her mailbox. She tore open the white envelope under the flickering fluorescent tube of her apartment hallway. Level 1 CFA exam, passed, top 10th percentile. She did not celebrate. She placed the letter inside a neat blue folder, sat down at her desk, and opened her Level 2 textbooks. By her 18th month at Apex Capital, her sharp eye for numbers caught the attention of the senior partners. During a quarterly portfolio review, a senior manager presented a forecast for a retail property in suburban Chicago. Clara raised her hand from the back of the glass-walled conference room. The net operating income on page 12 is inflated by 7%. Clara stated smoothly, standing up. She did not blush. She did not hesitate. They excluded the deferred maintenance costs on the HVAC systems and smoothed out tenant lease renewals. If interest rates rise 50 basis points, this asset becomes cash flow negative in month 18. The room went dead silent. The senior manager blinked, looked down at his papers, and recalculated the figures. Clara remained standing, her arms folded, her gaze cold and steady. She was right. 2 weeks later, her boss handed her a new contract. Senior risk analyst, accompanied by a 40% salary increase and a private office overlooking the Chicago River. 2 years after that, Clara sat at her laminate desk in the West Loop studio for the last time. The radiator hissed quietly in the corner. The train rattled past her window, casting stripes of yellow light across her wall. A heavy linen envelope lay on her desk. She broke the red wax seal and pulled out a gold-embossed certificate from the CFA Institute. Beneath it lay a formal memo from the executive board of Apex Capital. Appointment of Clara Vance to Director of Risk Analysis and Investment Strategy. Clara walked over to the small mirror hanging by the door. She looked at her reflection. The pale, anxious woman who used to cower in a Lincoln Park kitchen was completely gone. In her place stood a woman with dark, sharp eyes, a sculpted jawline, and a calm, immovable presence. Her skin glowed with health. Her posture was straight as steel. She reached up, unpinned her taped note from the wall, folded it neatly, and placed it inside her leather briefcase next to her new credentials. She picked up her heavy winter coat, turned off the desk lamp, and stepped out into the hallway, her heels striking the floor with a clean, sharp rhythm. 3 years passed. Clara Vance did not just survive in the high-stakes world of Chicago commercial real estate. She dominated it. As Director of Risk Analysis and Investment Strategy at Apex Capital, her reputation was ironclad. The corporate floor on the 45th level smelled of polished oak, expensive leather, and fresh espresso. Clara's office had floor-to-ceiling glass windows that looked out over the steel bridges and dark, winding waters of the Chicago River. She worked with surgical precision. While other directors relied on intuition and charm, Clara relied on cold, irrefutable data. Her defining moment came during a proposed $50 million acquisition of a commercial shopping complex in suburban Cook County. The entire executive board was eager to close the deal. Clara spent 48 hours straight digging through the seller's raw financial ledgers. At 3 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, her red pen stopped on a footnote in the property's municipal tax filings. She found a hidden environmental remediation lien and a series of artificially inflated lease structures designed to mask a dying anchor tenant. During the final investment committee meeting, she presented a 10-page risk audit. She spoke for 8 minutes in a calm, quiet voice. She did not raise her tone. She simply pointed her laser line at the financial anomalies projected on the wall screen. The committee killed the deal that afternoon. 6 months later, the complex filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy under a rival buyer. Clara had saved Apex Capital tens of millions of dollars. The board rewarded her with full authority over the firm's core real estate portfolio and a compensation package that placed her in the top tier of Chicago finance. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the world was collapsing for the Vance family. Julian's residential real estate business hit a wall as interest rates surged and property sales froze. His high-end lifestyle, the leased German sports cars, the country club memberships, the expensive watches, was built on a house of cards. At the same time, Trevor's reckless financial behavior reached a breaking point. Trevor had taken out predatory loans from private hard money lenders to fund a failed cryptocurrency mining scheme. The lenders were demanding immediate repayment, threatening to foreclose on Evelyn's suburban home, which she had foolishly put up as collateral. Desperate and drowning in debt, Julian made a discovery. While browsing an industry publication showcasing top women in Midwest finance, he saw a full-page photo of Clara. She was wearing a tailored navy suit, her chin lifted, her eyes calm and powerful. Beneath the photo was her title, Director of Risk Analysis and Investment Strategy, Apex Capital. Julian's mind immediately went to work. He assumed Clara's rise was due to luck, corporate diversity quotas, or basic clerical work at a high level. He believed that beneath her expensive suit, she was still the same quiet, eager-to-please woman he had left in Lincoln Park. On a cold Thursday evening, Clara's private phone rang. The screen displayed an unlisted Chicago number. She answered with a crisp tone. "Clara Vance." "Clara, it's Julian." His voice was different than she remembered. The old arrogant edge was gone, replaced by a smooth, warm, and apologetic tone. "I've been trying to find a way to reach you for months. I saw the article in the Business Journal. I am so proud of you, Clara. I always knew you had this in you." Clara sat still at her desk. Her pulse remained perfectly steady. "What do you want, Julian?" "I want to see you," Julian said smoothly. "I made terrible mistakes, Clara. Terrible. I was young, stressed, and blind to what I had right in front of me. Can we just have dinner? One dinner, as mature adults. Let's talk about the past and see if we can heal." Clara looked out at the city lights twinkling against the dark expanse of Lake Michigan. She saw right through his sudden warmth. She smelled the familiar, rancid odor of desperation and greed behind his sweet words. "Very well," Clara said quietly. Tomorrow night. The grill on Michigan Avenue. 7 o'clock. The restaurant smelled of seared ribeye, expensive cigar smoke, and heavy red wine. Julian arrived early, wearing his best charcoal suit. Sitting next to him was his mother, Evelyn. Her silver hair was styled, but her face looked drawn and pale, her eyes darting nervously around the room. When Clara stepped through the entrance, the air in the room seemed to shift. She wore a minimalist ivory trench coat over a sharp black silk dress. Her short hair was styled with precision. Her gold watch glinted under the warm chandelier lights. She walked with a slow, powerful elegance. Julian stood up immediately, pulling out her chair with an eager, nervous smile. "Clara, you look incredible." Evelyn reached across the white tablecloth, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to pat Clara's arm. "Oh, Clara, my dear. Look at you. We have missed you so much. The family hasn't been the same without your quiet warmth." Clara sat down, signaling the waiter for a glass of sparkling water. She did not touch Evelyn's hand. She did not return Julian's smile. She watched them with the cold, detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. Throughout the meal, Julian and Evelyn played their parts. They asked about her health and complimented her appearance, keeping the conversation light. But as dessert arrived, the illusion fell apart. Julian cleared his throat and leaned across the table, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Clara, the truth is, the family is facing a temporary liquidity crunch. Trevor got caught in a dishonest business partnership. Predatory lenders are trying to take Mom's house. It's an emergency." Evelyn dabbed at her eye with a cloth napkin, squeezing out a dry tear. "They want to take my home, Clara, the house Julian and Trevor grew up in. You've always been so good with money. You work at a giant fund now. Julian told me you handle millions." Julian nodded quickly. "We don't need a handout, Clara. We just need a favor. You have access to institutional credit lines at Apex Capital. If you can push through a corporate bridge loan or act as an internal guarantor for a refinancing package for Trevor's debt, it would save us. Just a quick signature from your office. We'll pay it back within 6 months. Family helps family, right?" They looked at her with wide, eager eyes, expecting her to soften, expecting her to fall back into her old role as the desperate pleaser. Clara took a slow sip of her sparkling water. The cold bubbles tickled her throat. She set the glass down on the coaster with a soft, clean click. She looked at Julian, then at Evelyn. She felt no rage. She felt no heartbreak. She felt only a profound, crystalline clarity. They had not invited her to dinner to apologize. They had invited her because they saw her as an easy target, a bank account with a face. A slow, polite smile touched Clara's lips. It was a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Corporate finance is a strictly regulated process, Julian," Clara said, her voice smooth and pleasantly neutral. "Apex Capital does not issue personal loans or informal favors. Everything must pass through our formal risk assessment protocol." Julian's eyes lit up with sudden hope. "Right, of course. A formal review. Can you set it up?" Clara reached into her leather purse, pulled out a crisp, heavy card, and slid it across the white tablecloth. The card was stark white, with raised black lettering. It listed the corporate address of Apex Capital, Tower 45, and her office floor. It omitted her direct mobile number. "This Tuesday at 10 in the morning," Clara said, standing up and buttoning her trench coat. "Bring Trevor, his complete business records, his debt balance sheets, and all tax filings for the last 3 years to my office. If the numbers pass the risk assessment threshold of our committee, we will discuss terms." Julian grabbed the card like a starving man reaching for bread. "We'll be there. 10 sharp. Thank you, Clara. I knew you still cared about this family." Clara did not answer. She did not glance back as she walked out of the restaurant into the crisp Chicago night air. She stepped into her waiting black car, closed the door, and looked at her calendar app. She scheduled room 4501, the main executive boardroom, for Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Then she added 4 senior corporate attorneys and 2 forensic auditors to the meeting invite. She leaned her head back against the leather seat and looked out at the glowing city skyline. The trap was set. Tuesday morning broke with a bitter, biting chill. The wind howled off Lake Michigan, carrying sharp blades of ice. Julian Vance pulled open the heavy glass doors of Tower 45. Warm, heavy air rushed out to meet him. The lobby smelled of citrus polish, rich espresso, and old money. Julian smiled. He brushed a snowflake from his expensive charcoal suit. He adjusted his silk tie. He felt powerful. Trevor walked behind him. Trevor wore a cheap gray suit. It did not fit well. He gripped a thin, wrinkled manila folder. His knuckles were white. His palms sweated. He smelled of fear and heavy cologne. Evelyn followed them both. She wore a thick mink coat and fake pearl earrings. She lifted her chin, trying to match the grandeur of the building. White marble stretched across the vast lobby floor. Giant columns of black steel rose toward a glass ceiling. The space was eerily quiet. Only the soft, rhythmic clicking of leather shoes echoed in the air. Julian stepped up to the massive security desk. He leaned against the polished stone. He flashed his best salesman smile. "Julian Vance, we have a 10 o'clock meeting." Clara set it up. The security guard did not smile back. He did not look impressed. He typed quietly on a black keyboard. The screen beeped. He reached into a drawer and pulled out 3 heavy plastic badges. "Level 45, the guard said." His voice was flat. "Executive suites. You require an escort." Julian smirked. He grabbed the badges. He looked back at his mother. "Level 45. She must have booked a nice conference room for us. I told you, she still wants to please us." A woman in a sharp black suit approached them. She did not introduce herself. "Follow me," she commanded. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble. Click, click, click. The sound was crisp, intimidating. Julian, Trevor, and Evelyn followed her into a private elevator. The walls were made of smoked, mirrored glass. The doors slid shut with a soft, airtight hiss. The machine surged upward. The acceleration pressed heavy against their boots. Their ears popped. The digital floor numbers flashed in glowing red. 20, 30, 40, 45. A soft chime rang. The doors glided open. Thick, dark wool carpet swallowed their footsteps. The air up here felt entirely different. It was heavy. It smelled of aged leather, fresh ink, and absolute power. There were no ringing phones. There was no casual chatter. Silence ruled this floor. The assistant led them down a wide, dimly lit corridor. At the end of the hall stood massive double doors made of dark oak. She pushed them open. The heavy brass hinges groaned a low, deep note. The boardroom was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling glass wrapped around 3 walls. The frozen expanse of Lake Michigan glittered violently under the morning sun. A massive mahogany table commanded the center of the room. 10 high-backed leather chairs lined the edges. 6 people sat at the table. 4 men and 2 women. They wore dark, flawless suits. They had laptops open. Their faces were blank, cold, analytical. Julian stepped into the room. He puffed out his chest. He prepared his charming, confident greeting. He looked toward the head of the table. The smile died on his face. The blood drained instantly from his cheeks. His skin turned ash gray. He stopped breathing. Evelyn stopped walking. Her fingers went completely limp. Her black leather handbag slipped. It hit the thick carpet with a dull, heavy thud. Trevor swallowed hard. A dry, clicking sound echoed in his throat. His knees began to shake. At the head of the table sat Clara Vance. She wore a tailored, midnight blue suit, the fabric cut sharply across her straight shoulders. Her short hair caught the bright sunlight. She sat perfectly still. Her hands rested flat on the polished mahogany. Her dark eyes were calm. They held no warmth. They held no fear. They were terrifyingly empty. In front of her sat a heavy, solid brass nameplate. The engraved letters gleamed in the light. Clara Vance, Managing Director. A suffocating, heavy silence filled the room. The air grew thin. Julian opened his mouth. No sound came out. He looked at the brass nameplate. He looked at the row of silent lawyers. He looked back at Clara. The invisible wife was gone. The woman sitting before him controlled billions of dollars. "Take a seat," Clara said. Her voice did not shake. It did not rise in anger. It cut through the cold air like a steel blade. Trevor collapsed into the nearest chair. He breathed in short, panicked gasps. Julian sat down slowly. His hands trembled violently. He wiped cold sweat from his upper lip. Evelyn remained standing. She gripped the back of a leather chair. Her knuckles turned bone white. "You requested a bridge loan," Clara said. "A corporate bailout. Hand your files to the lead auditor." Julian's hand shook. He slid the thin, pathetic manila folder across the smooth wood. A man in a sharp blue suit stopped it with one finger. He opened it. He did not smile. He glanced at the papers, then looked up at Clara and nodded. Clara did not read the file. She pressed a silver button on her desk. The glass walls instantly darkened. A massive screen lowered silently from the ceiling. A high-lumen projector hummed to life. Blinding white light hit the screen. Columns of numbers filled the display. Red numbers. Trevor's actual, unedited financial records. "Let us review the reality," Clara said. Her tone was clinical. "Your short-term debt ratio is 4-to-1. Your cash flow has been strictly negative for 36 months. You have defaulted on 3 separate vendor contracts. You claim a projected revenue of $2 million on page 4. This is a complete fabrication." Clara picked up a metal laser pointer. A bright red dot hit the screen. It circled a hidden line of text. "You failed to disclose an active lawsuit from a commercial landlord," Clara continued. "You inflated your core asset valuations by 40% to mask a liquidity crisis. This business model is not simply flawed. It is fraudulent." Julian tried to speak. His voice cracked. "Clara, please, listen to me. Do not interrupt me." The command cracked like a whip. It echoed off the glass walls. Julian snapped his mouth shut. He shrank down into his chair. He looked small, pitiful. "As the managing director of Apex Capital, my duty is to evaluate risk," Clara said. "This proposal is financial garbage. It holds zero investment value. Your request for corporate capital is permanently denied." Trevor buried his face in his trembling hands. A quiet, wet sob escaped his throat. Evelyn stared at the floor. She could not look Clara in the eye. Julian looked at Clara. His eyes begged. They pleaded for mercy. They searched desperately for the quiet, obedient woman he used to command. She was not there. Clara reached into a leather folder. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not a glossy corporate document. It was a standard bank statement. She slid it across the long table. The paper whispered against the polished wood. It stopped directly in front of Julian. He looked down. He saw the bold red 0. He saw the exact date. He saw the wire transfer authorization to Trevor. $65,000. "That is my professional assessment," Clara said. The room grew freezing cold. "Now, for my personal assessment." Julian stared at the paper. His heart hammered violently against his ribs. You stole $65,000 from a joint account under false pretenses, Clara stated. You wired it to a failing, fraudulent entity. I hold the original wire authorization. I hold the text messages. I hold the timestamped logs. I have absolute, undeniable legal grounds to prosecute you for financial fraud. Julian gasped. He gripped the edge of the table. Clara, no, you wouldn't. Please. We are family. Clara tilted her head. Her dark eyes bored into his panicked soul. We are nothing, Clara whispered softly. The quietness of her voice made it infinitely more terrifying. I could take your real estate license. I could take your bank accounts. I could take your freedom. I have the power to destroy you before you leave this building. Julian let out a shaky, pathetic breath. Tears welled in his eyes. Clara leaned forward. Her posture was absolute. But I will not. Relief washed over Julian's sweaty face. He let out a loud gasp. I will not sue you, Clara said, because dragging you into a courtroom gives you importance. You are not important, Julian. You are obsolete. She gestured toward the screen. Look at yourselves. You dressed up. You came to my tower. You came here to beg. You are bankrupt. You are desperate. You are staring at the woman you called worthless, praying she saves your life. Clara stood up. She smoothed the front of her suit jacket. My success is your punishment, Clara declared. Your humiliation in this room today is my justice. You will live the rest of your life knowing exactly what you threw away, and knowing you can never, ever get it back. She pressed a button on her phone. Security. Room 4501. Escort these guests out of the building. Revoke their access permanently. The heavy oak doors opened immediately. Two large men in black suits stepped into the room. They stood silently behind Julian and Trevor. Julian stood up. His legs wobbled. He looked at Clara. He searched her face for a flicker of anger. Anger meant she still cared. Anger meant she still felt pain. He found nothing. He saw absolute, terrifying indifference. He was a stranger to her, a ghost fading into the background. Clara, he whispered. The word broke into pieces in his throat. Clara turned her back to him. She walked toward the massive glass window. She looked out at the bright, frozen lake. The sun warmed her face. Remove them, she ordered the guards. She listened to the shuffling of feet. She heard Evelyn's quiet weeping. She heard the heavy oak doors close. The brass latch clicked shut with a sharp, final snap. Clara stood alone in the quiet room. She took a deep, slow breath. The air tasted clean. It tasted like absolute freedom. The heavy chains of the past shattered into invisible dust. The phantom of the cold kitchen was dead. The queen was born. For days passed. A gray, damp chill swallowed Chicago. Heavy clouds trapped the cold against the concrete streets. Clara sat inside a West Loop coffee shop. The air smelled of burnt espresso beans and wet wool. Steam rose in thick white ribbons from her cup. The espresso machine hissed violently. Hiss, sputter, hiss. The rhythm was loud, constant. The glass door chimed. A cold gust rushed in. Trevor entered. He looked different. The flashy suits were gone. He wore a faded flannel shirt and heavy denim. His shoulders slumped. His wrist was bare. No fake gold watch. He looked older, tired. He walked to her table. He stood with his hands buried in his pockets. Thank you for meeting me, Trevor said. His voice was quiet, hollow. Clara pointed to the metal chair. Sit. It scraped loudly against the tile. He ordered nothing. He stared at the scratched wood. I did not come for money, Trevor whispered. His eyes were red-rimmed. I came to say you were right. Clara sipped her coffee. The bitter liquid burned her throat pleasantly. The ceramic clinked against the saucer. They always caught me, Trevor said. His voice trembled. Julian, Mom, they fixed my messes. They told me I had bad luck. I felt entitled to their money. And yours. He rubbed his face. Dry skin scratched against his palms. In that boardroom, I felt like a stupid child. Trevor said, You stripped the lies away. Nobody ever did that. Being coddled ruined me. Clara, it made me a parasite. Clara watched him. The old anger was gone. What now? Trevor took a shaky breath. I sold the sports car. I moved to a cheap room in Pilsen. Tomorrow, I start construction work. Hauling drywall. Mixing cement. I need calluses. I am starting at absolute zero. Clara saw real pride in his bloodshot eyes. The spoiled boy was dead. Good, Clara said. Her voice was firm. Do the work, Trevor. Save yourself. He nodded. He buttoned his cheap jacket against the cold. I am sorry, Clara. He walked out. The door swung shut. The machine hissed again. Clara finished her coffee in peace. Rain fell at 5 o'clock. A miserable, freezing drizzle. The sky turned the color of bruised iron. Street lights flickered on. They cast jagged yellow streaks on wet asphalt. The air smelled of damp concrete and heavy exhaust fumes. Clara walked toward her glass lobby. Her black umbrella blocked the rain. Drops drummed heavily against the nylon. Tat, tat, tat. Steady, calming. A dark shadow stepped from the alleyway. Julian. He looked pathetic. His expensive charcoal coat was soaked. Dark patches stained the shoulders. Wet hair plastered his pale forehead. He shivered violently. Clara, he choked out. His teeth chattered loudly. Clara stopped. The rain splashed against her leather boots. She felt no pity, only a vast, silent emptiness. You are trespassing, Clara said. He raised his shaking hands. Please, do not throw us away. We are already thrown away. I was stupid, Julian cried. His voice cracked. Warm tears mixed with freezing rain. I took you for granted. You are brilliant. Give me one more chance. He reached for her dry trench coat sleeve. Clara stepped back. Her movement was sharp. Final. Stop. The word carried crushing weight. Julian froze. His hand dropped. Clara looked into his red, desperate eyes. I forgive you, Julian. A frantic smile twitched on his blue lips. Clara. Listen, Clara cut in. Her voice was smooth, unwavering. I forgive you. I forgive your mother. I forgive the theft. But I do not forgive you because you deserve it. His smile vanished. Cold rain dripped from his chin. I forgive you because I refuse to carry you, Clara stated. Anger is a chain. Hatred is heavy. I will not let the toxic trash of our past pollute my mind. I am releasing you. I am completely free. Julian shook his head wildly. No, I will fix it. Forgiveness does not mean access, Clara said. You do not get a seat at my table. My boundaries are solid stone. You are a stranger. Clara, please. Julian sobbed. The ugly sound echoed off the wet brick walls. Clara did not flinch. She felt the intoxicating power of her own mind. She was no victim. The greatest revenge was her absolute, unshakable peace. Goodbye, Julian. She turned her back. She walked toward the glowing glass doors. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement. Click, 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 marching forward. Clara, he screamed into the rain. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hum. Warm, dry air rushed out. Clara stepped inside. The heavy glass shut behind her. It muted his screams instantly. He became a silent ghost outside. She lowered her umbrella. The lobby smelled of fresh white lilies. Her heart beat with a slow, powerful rhythm. The broken shards of her past washed away in the gutter. She was safe. 6 months passed. The brutal Chicago winter finally surrendered. It melted into a crisp, golden autumn. Clara Vance stood on a raised stage. A heavy wooden podium rested under her hands. The auditorium smelled of polished pine, old paper, and fresh white lilies. 200 women sat in the rows of red velvet chairs before her. They listened in absolute, breathless silence. Clara had launched the Aurora Foundation, using her own capital. It was not merely a charity. It was a fortress. The foundation provided free legal counsel. It offered rigorous financial literacy training. It gave shelter and strategy to women trapped in the invisible cages of economic and emotional abuse. Clara leaned closer to the silver microphone. Her voice rang out through the speakers. It was clear, steady, unbreakable. Healing is not a passive wish, Clara told the crowd. It requires a structured plan. If you want to transform your life, you cannot simply wait for rescue. You must build a blueprint for the person you intend to become. She looked at the faces in the front row. She saw bruised spirits. She saw fear. She saw hope. She saw the ghost of her own past. Transformation demands concrete, actionable steps, Clara continued, her eyes locking onto a young woman clutching a notebook. You do not just dream of independence. You execute it. You secure your bank accounts. You learn to read a balance sheet. You wake up early. You train your mind and your body to endure. The phase where you truly become your new self is built on daily, deliberate action. You step out of the shadows by walking forward, one practical step at a time. The room erupted. The applause rolled through the hall like thunder. Clap, clap, clap. The sound bounced off the high ceiling, loud and powerful. Women stood up. Some wiped tears from their cheeks. Some smiled with newfound, fierce determination. Clara smiled back. She felt a profound, grounding warmth expanding in her chest. She was passing the torch. The pain of her past had become the fuel for their future. At 4 o'clock, Clara walked through Millennium Park. The autumn air was sharp and clean. It smelled of roasted sweet almonds from a nearby vendor cart. It smelled of damp earth and cooling asphalt. Dry amber leaves crunched loudly under her leather boots. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The rhythm was steady and calm. She wore a tailored beige wool dress. The soft fabric moved lightly with the autumn wind. Her dark hair fell naturally around her face, framing her sharp jawline. She held a paper cup of warm, black coffee. The heat seeped comfortably through the cardboard into her bare palms. The sun hung low in the western sky. It was the golden hour. Thick, honey-colored light flooded the wide concrete plaza. It hit the massive steel curve of the Cloud Gate sculpture. The giant metallic beam mirrored the brilliant sky. It warped the towering Chicago skyline into a smooth, glowing wave of glass and steel. The buildings looked painted in fire and gold. Clara stopped walking. She stood perfectly still in the center of the plaza. She watched her reflection in the polished metal surface. She did not see a victim. She did not see a tired, invisible wife scrubbing greasy pans in a cold kitchen. She saw a woman carved from pure resilience. She saw an executive. She saw a protector. She thought of Julian. She thought of his desperate face in the rain-soaked alleyway. The memory held no sting. It held no weight. The heavy, rusting chains of resentment were completely gone. She felt light. She felt entirely whole. A cool breeze swept across the open plaza. It rustled the orange and yellow maple leaves hanging on the branches above her head. Swish, swish. The sound was soft and soothing. Clara closed her eyes. She inhaled deeply. The crisp air filled her lungs to the brim. It tasted pure. It tasted like vast, open possibility. She let the breath out in a slow, steady stream. The tension melted entirely from her shoulders. She opened her eyes and looked up. The sky was an endless, perfect blue. Not a single gray cloud blocked the warm sun. A soft, genuine smile broke across her face. It reached her dark eyes. "This freedom," Clara whispered softly to the wind. "This freedom is beautiful." The city hummed around her. The distant roar of traffic blended with the laughter of children playing nearby. The golden light wrapped around her shoulders like a warm, heavy coat. She took a slow sip of her coffee. She turned her face upward, letting the sun warm her skin. And she walked forward into the bright, open afternoon. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. Please like, share, and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Hope to see you on the next page.